Hey, welcome back to the channel, folks. Once again, my name is Josh. Guess what? Today, we have a super hot topic to talk about. Something that I saw online not too long ago that kind of made me think. And I think it's going to make you think as well. And that is, what is the difference between a modification and an accessory? Those are actually two completely different things. Now, both of which may be designed to enhance your vehicle performance or even enhance your driving experience. But they are two completely different things. So in this video, we're going to dive into the differences between a modification and an accessory. So you know what? Let's get started. Welcome back to Jeeping for Beginners, folks. Once again, my name is Josh. We're talking about the differences between modifications and accessories on your off-road vehicle. Do you know what the difference is? Well, if you do, then go ahead and put that down in the comments below. You can go ahead and skip the rest of the video. But otherwise, you want to stick around because I thought that this was pretty interesting. First, let's talk about what an accessory is. Okay, an accessory to your vehicle is designed to either change the aesthetics or a creature comfort or a look, basically, on the vehicle that you can be proud of or that you want, but has nothing to do with the core mechanics of the vehicle. So a modification, therefore, would be the addition or removal of a component that has a direct effect on the mechanical performance of the vehicle. So those are pretty broad terms, right? Let's talk about some examples, all right? First of all, for a modification that is probably the most common one that people use on their four-wheel drives is new components in your suspension system, either lifting it or simply replacing it with stronger parts. That modifies the way the vehicle behaves, modifies the way the vehicle performs, usually for the better. But that would make it not an accessory, right? So an accessory to the vehicle would be things like auxiliary lights. They are not changing the performance of the vehicle. It's not going to affect its fuel economy. It's not going to affect how it steers, brakes, or accelerates, but they are there for the ability to change your perception of what you can see. Therefore, accessory. So in an effort to make this video a little bit more fun and a little bit more interactive, here's what I've decided to do, okay? We know the definition of a modification. We know the definition of an accessory. But there's some gray areas out there on what falls into what category. So that being said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to point out some of the most common changes to a Jeep Wrangler using mine as an example. And I want you to tell me whether you think it would be considered a modification to the vehicle or an accessory on the vehicle. Guys, I think we're going to have some fun here. All right. So let me show you the first example of what I feel falls in that gray area. My favorite one that falls in that gray area is a winch. Would you consider a winch to be a modification or an accessory? Well, a winch doesn't directly impact the core mechanics of the vehicle, right? Therefore, should be considered an accessory. However, when it comes to off-road use, a winch can have a direct impact on the performance of a vehicle, meaning that it's there to get you unstuck, and it is hard mounted directly to the frame. That would almost make it a modification. So what do you think? Do you think a winch is considered an accessory or a modification? Now, the second thing that I want to point out that I've seen a little bit of confusion online between a modification and an accessory is a roof rack. Now, depending upon the style of the roof rack, that might make it easily fall into one category or the other. But let's take my roof rack for example. This one is the Gobi Safari rack. It is hard mounted directly to the bumper in the back and hard mounted directly to the windshield frame up front. It's designed to carry several hundred pounds and plenty of other accessories for the long haul. So would this roof rack be considered a modification to the vehicle because it basically is connected directly to the frame? Or would it be considered an accessory because it doesn't have anything to do with the core mechanics of the vehicle? Interesting, right? So we had talked about your suspension lift being a modification to the vehicle because it changes performance and behavior. Well, what about these bigger tires and your rims? Let's talk about them separately. Your tires may change the performance of the vehicle, but they're pretty much an accessory to the lift, right? So would these be considered a modification or would these be considered an accessory? What about the rims? Now let's talk about those separately. You don't necessarily need to replace your rims in order to put bigger tires on the vehicle, but a wider wheel can also change the performance of the vehicle. So would a good looking rim be considered an accessory or a modification? Okay, so here's the next example. On my Jeep, I've got an AFE Stage 2 cool air intake. Would that be considered a modification or an accessory? Well, it has a direct effect on the performance of the vehicle, but it's also a little bit more aesthetically pleasing under the hood. Aesthetically pleasing, performance, guess it could go either way. I know the answer. Do you know the answer? All right, so I could go nuts because I've got a lot of changes on this vehicle between interior parts, exterior parts, you know, little cosmetic things. But we're only going to talk about one more item. And this one, I see a lot of debate online. How about a set of rocker guards or replacement side steps on your vehicle? Would you consider that a modification or an accessory? Now, it doesn't have a direct impact on the drivability, the core mechanics, or the performance of the vehicle, but it does have an impact on off-road performance. So there's that. Some of them are very aesthetically pleasing. They're easy to install, and whether you have it or you don't have it won't stop you from driving it. So what do you think? Do you consider your side steps or rocker guards to be a modification or an accessory? All right, guys, so the reason why I just went through those couple of different examples is simply to get you to kind of think about that difference. Now remember, right at the beginning of this video, we talked about a modification is something that when added or removed from the vehicle has a direct impact on the vehicle's performance. An accessory, on the other hand, is more for aesthetics or personal preference that does not have a direct impact on the core mechanics of the vehicle. So, that being said, let's go down through that list one more time. Okay. A winch on the front of your vehicle, although can come in handy for off road performance, has zero impact on the actual mechanical performance of your vehicle. Therefore, your winch is considered an accessory. So, your roof rack, even though in my case is directly attached to the core structure of the vehicle, is actually considered an accessory because with or without it, you can still perform the necessary operations of this vehicle because it has zero impact on the actual mechanical components that operate this particular Jeep. Your wheels and tires. Now, the tires, for example, it's pretty obvious. That's actually a modification. You're changing a core aspect of the vehicle's driveline to something that's larger, heavier. It's going to have a direct impact on fuel economy, on speed, on safety systems, your brakes, so on and so forth. Tires are definitely considered to be a modification. The rims, on the other hand, I'm going to go with accessory, because whether you change the size of the wheel to an 18, a 20, or wider, or so on and so forth, doesn't necessarily have an impact on the performance of the vehicle. It's more of an impact on the aesthetics and the look of what you're trying to accomplish with those bigger tires that are the modification on the vehicle. We talked about under my hood and some of the changes that I've made under there. Now, the cold air intake has a direct impact on the performance of the vehicle, a direct impact on fuel economy, a direct impact on airflow, on throttle response, so on and so forth. So that would actually be considered a modification, not an accessory, which is something that I've seen a lot of confusion on when it comes to the forums, is even just replacing an air filter in a factory airbox with a K&N air filter is still considered a modification, because you're changing the behavior of one of the mechanical components that's under the hood of your vehicle. Now, last but not least, we talked about rocker guards. This one, I'm going to leave up to you. I want you to honestly tell me if you think this is a modification or an accessory on the vehicle. Like I said, I have my opinion on it, but this one could almost go either way. So make sure you put that in the comments below. Is this a modification or is this an accessory? So basically, folks, what I'm trying to get at, I know that was a little corny, and for some people it's probably, a little basic, but the idea is when we start talking about modifying our Jeep Wrangler, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about changing its mechanical behavior, or are we talking about adding something that makes us feel better about the driver? And that's something that I want you to keep in mind. Not because it's important, or not because it really matters in the long run, because at the end of the day, it's a customization. And that is true no matter what we're talking about, is you are customizing it to fit your needs. But like I said, I thought that it was really interesting to take into consideration what the difference is between an actual modification versus an accessory on your Jeep Wrangler. So in the meantime, folks, like I said, I'm very curious to hear from you. Put it down in the comments below, your opinion on what we covered in this video. If you have any other questions, or you have another gray area yourself that you're not sure if it falls in that modification or accessory range, feel free to put that down there too, because I would love to know that you guys have also thought about this. So in the meantime, folks, I'm going to let you go because I've got a lot of work to do this week preparing for our online class that is launching here in just a couple of days. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, you should definitely do it. There's several links in the description below this video, depending upon which part of it you're interested in, or you can just go directly to my website at jeepingforbeginners.com. So in the meantime, folks, stay safe, happy jeeping, and we'll see you next time.
You can still go, even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way.